There are moments when something speaks through you. A move, a speech, a solution. It arrives already formed. The body acts. The hand writes. But you didn't decide. You weren't thinking. You were being moved. Some call it divine inspiration. William Blake called it influx, the mind invaded by the sacred. Stravinsky said he was led by an unknown force. These moments have been described as possession, grace, or madness. And science has tried to explain them. Not with one answer, but many. From transient hypofrontality to neural synchrony to theta wave entrainment. Whatever the cause, the experience is unmistakable. You vanish. Something else moves in, and it moves better than you ever could. Two explanations, one experience. For thousands of years, these moments were seen as divine visitations. In Greece, it was the daimon, not a demon, but a spirit mind that whispered your destiny. In Christianity, it was the Holy Spirit. In ancient Egypt, the Ka, a second self, a vital spark, working through the flesh. These were not metaphors. They were maps. Maps for navigating a mind that doesn't always belong to you. Today, we use different words. Flow, focus, peak state, unlocking performance, accessing genius. The lab coat replaces the altar, but the mystery remains. Neuroscience shows that in these states, something strange happens. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-monitoring and doubt, goes quiet. You stop thinking about what you're doing, and you start doing it as if guided by instinct or fate. This is called transient hypofrontality. A temporary shutdown of executive control. Not an explanation, but a doorway. The same doorway mystics once walked through barefoot. Know this. There are different doors to the same state. You don't need a robe or a ritual to enter this state. It can happen in a stadium, in a boardroom, in the middle of a fight. The basketball coach, Phil Jackson, called it the sacred moment of the game, where ego disappears and the team becomes one body. Kobe Bryant had a name for it too, the blackout. A place he reached through repetition so deep, it became invocation. The chess grandmaster, Bobby Fischer, spoke of moments where he could see 20 moves ahead, as if the board was moving itself. These are not just metaphors. Something shifts in the brain and in the body. Heart rate regulates. Cortisol drops. The mind becomes highly focused yet strangely open. Time distorts. And no matter the method, music, motion, warfare, business, the structure is the same. A narrow channel opens, and something greater passes through. You can't force it, but you can invite it. And the way you invite it is always the same. First, structure. Every doorway needs a frame. In sport, it's the warm-up. In music, the scale. In strategy, the silence before the move. Repetition becomes a ritual of entry. It tells the nervous system, prepare. Something is about to happen. Second, constraint. total freedom kills flow. It's within limits, the rules of the game, the boundaries of the canvas, that the unconscious starts to move. Third, immersion. No multitasking, no self-watching. Flow requires full absorption. When you're in, the prefrontal cortex begins to dim. Fourth, risk. There has to be something at stake. It could be the outcome, the performance, the reputation. The brain only opens the deeper circuits when it feels the moment matters. These four elements, structure, constraint, immersion, and risk, create a kind of psychic chamber. And if it's built right, something walks in. Most people never touch this state. Not because it's rare, but because it's threatening. To enter it, you have to let go of control. And control is the ego's religion. Flow doesn't visit the one who's watching himself perform. It avoids the anxious planner, the overtalker, the self-conscious mimic. It needs silence. Not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence of internal surrender. But surrender is terrifying. Because in that moment, something else takes the wheel. And if your identity is built on being the driver, that moment feels like death. So you self-sabotage, you over-prepare, you double-check. You inject just enough friction to stay in charge. You block the door just to keep the ghost from walking in. Remember, you channel what you are. Even when the channel opens, what comes through depends on who's holding the vessel. The ancient Greeks didn't believe in talent. They believed in a demon, a guiding spirit assigned to each soul. Romans called it the genius. Not you are a genius, but you have one. These weren't fantasies. They were frameworks. Symbols for something real, the signal behind the self. But that signal always bends to its container. A disciplined mind channels clarity. A fractured one invites chaos. If your identity is built on fear, what comes through will tremble. If your identity is built on rage, what arrives may burn too hot to hold. You don't just open the door. You shape what walks through it. The demon wears the mask you hand it. So what is the demon, this thing that moves through you? Psychologically, it's your unconscious mind. The part that sees patterns, remembers what you forget, and speaks in dreams. Neurologically, it may be the brain's modular system, a network of competing sub-selves offering solutions from below awareness. Some call it a predictive engine. Others, a creative synthesis of memory, emotion, and skill. But those describe the machinery. They don't explain the presence. Symbolically, the demon is your inner twin. The double you meet in moments of risk, surrender, or transformation. It's the part that speaks in symbols. The voice behind silence. The force that arrives when the ego steps aside. And here's the paradox. You can't summon it. But you can prepare the ground. That means cleaning up the channel, practicing in solitude, listening more than speaking, risking more than rehearsing. Before the poet or scientist even hears a whisper, your brain has already staged the event, shifting gears, dimming oversight, tuning into some deeper signal. That isn't poetic fluff. It's hardwired physiology. Modern neuroscience places the prefrontal cortex, your inner editorial desk, onto a dimmer switch. When flow arrives, that switch is dialed down. The relentless chatter of self-criticism, the internal voice saying that could have been better, is silenced. This is the hypothesis of transient hypofrontality, first identified by Dr. Arne Dietrich. It aligns beautifully with the mystical accounts of mystical possession, where the self steps aside and a deeper intelligence moves in. The bridge between science and sorcery is literally neurochemical. The brain voluntarily relinquishing frontline control, allowing lower systems to lead. Meanwhile, another network awakens. The locus coeruleus norepinephrine, LCNE system, long known for modulating arousal and attention, enters an optimal midzone, neither too wired nor too dull. It's not mania nor stupor, but a lucid, narrow flow of engagement. Eye pupil studies and EEG rhythms show this tuning is essential for that elusive state where time warps and words come without effort. Ancient practitioners spoke of sacred silence, of ineffable clarity. Neuroscience now explains the physiology. The default mode network among parts of the brain responsible for self-reference is dialed back, leaving only the pure sensory motor axis operating at high speed. But let's go deeper than switches and dials. There's something more alchemical at play. Enter the concept of modular cognition, or what you might call the multiplicity of selves. Neuroscience suggests we are not one, but many. Discrete engines, pattern detectors, emotional evaluators, predictive synthesizers, all running in parallel. In normal life, the executive self arbitrates among them. In flow, that arbitrator steps aside, creating a temporary oligarchy, or, better yet, a conscious coalition of specialists. No one is in charge. Instead, the brain's collective modules generate new ideas, pattern completions, intuitive leaps, a predictive engine assembling novel outputs from past learning. This matches notional journeys of mystics, who spoke of daimons, genii, or higher selves as visitors, not joiners. They came not to occupy, but to borrow the vessel. The data shows that in flow, novel connections are made beneath conscious censorship. Yet the results can be breathtakingly precise. That's the paradox. Constraint yields freedom. The inner machinery synthesizes, not randomly, but with uncanny relevance. What about the emotional undercurrent? Neuroscience points again to deeper structures, the amygdala, the insula, the temporal lobes, where certainty is born from coherence, not from cognitive conviction. Brain studies on mystical states find a quieting in regions tied to uncertainty and self-reflection, a dimming that correlates with ineffable conviction. That's why we feel holy or possessed, not because we've been hypnotized, but because the usual filters are offline, and the unconscious speaks loudest then, and with startling certainty. A 2023 Drexel neuroimaging study confirms this alchemy. Veteran jazz musicians at the cusp of improvisation showed synchronous low-frequency neural patterns across regions tied to memory, motor skill, and aesthetic evaluation. Their brains were speaking to themselves in harmony, like a cult chorus rehearsed over years, then releasing their composition without conscious critique. It's ritual in neural form, built in practice, released in performance. Modern research even explores using TDCS, a slight electrical nudge, to induce this flow state temporarily. Yet, every neuroscientist will tell you this: you don't build genius with stimulation. You prepare the vessel so that when the switch flips, the machinery is not only switched on, but well-oiled, coordinated, ready. This is where the subtle occult echo returns. The ancients believed that only the prepared mind could host the divine spark. Temple, ritual, repetition, sobriety, focus, all aimed at refining the vessel. Your brain today needs the same thing. Years of practice tune the modular self, balance arousal systems, strengthen predictive synthesis, thus making the neurovessel hospitable. Flow, then, is a meeting point, a neurochemical plateau, a modular harmony, an aesthetic bridge between unconscious computation and conscious expression. And the daemon? It is that emergent phenomenon that arises when all elements align. The vessel, the chambers of the mind, the chemistry, the network. It is neither wholly outside nor inside, but a boundary event, a gestalt moment where brain, body, and myth converge. If you want to cultivate this, it is not by chanting or wiring. It is by disciplined devotion. By preparing your mind, clear enough to silence the censor, flexible enough to host emergent patterns, embodied enough for flow, and open enough for the unknown. And the payoff? Moments when you happen, when you are being done. Extraterrestrial, terrifying, true. Whether you're chasing a gold medal, pitching a company that doesn't exist yet, or drawing a line that says what words never could, the process is the same. You build the chamber, you narrow the noise, you step aside, and then something ancient moves through modern skin. It's not magic. It's not madness. It's what happens when identity becomes transparent and the deeper system is allowed to speak. The Greeks called it a daemon. The scientists call it flow. You can call it whatever you want. But when it happens, you'll know. Because for a moment, you stop trying. You stop performing. And the work does itself. That's the signal. That's the presence. That's the force that lives beneath the name you answer to. If the demon has ever passed through your hands, if the line wrote itself, if the voice was not yours, then you know. You know the silence before the signal, the chamber before the chant, the flicker behind the thought. So tell me, when did it come for you? What did it make you build? What did it take away? Speak your encounter, not for likes, not for clout, but because these marks, scratched into comment sections, are how we leave doors open for those who come next. Have you built your chamber? Or are you still waiting for the daemon to knock? Right below? And until next time, stay hollow, stay ready.